Because they don't care. They don't care. They don't know. They don't care. Left-wing activists help illegal child rapists escape from ICE. That is, ICE was attempting to serve a warrant. They wanted to arrest an illegal immigrant who had been convicted of child rape. And leftist activists showed up on scene to alert him so that he could escape. Because they don't care. Ideology and cult over everything. You know, I got friends, and I'm sure many of you do, some of which are falling deep into the cult. They cannot see beyond the immediate people who surround them. As the saying goes, you are the summation of the 5 people who surround you. And that is who deeply influences your views and the way you operate. These people turn on the TV and they see protests. This is why the left protests. And I think this is why it's important the right understands this. When a leftist or a liberal, they're different, but when they see on the internet or on TV 1,000 people, they are told it's everyone. They are told that everyone hates Trump, everyone hates ICE. And that when these activists say things like these are innocent individuals, members of our community, they don't care to look into it. It's a fact because they see a crowd. This has been a long tactic of the United States. The idea is if you can get 1,000 people to protest in any country, you can then claim in mass media worldwide that everyone in that country is outraged and demanding a change or action. In fact, again, with Egypt in Tahrir Square, couple thousand people, but the country's government collapsed twice. This is what drives these lunatics, because no sane person is going to help a child rapist, right? Unless they're in a cult. The Daily Wire reports left-wing activists on Friday allegedly tipped off an illegal alien who's a convicted child rapist, helping him escape from landing in U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody. Quote, this morning, ICE and FBI Denver were attempting to arrest Jose Reyes Leon Deris, a criminal alien from El Salvador, who is convicted of and wanted for child rape in Italy. ICE's Denver field office posted to X, during our surveillance of Leon, members of Colorado Rapid Response arrived on scene and alerted him to law enforcement's presence, which allowed him to escape arrest. Colorado Rapid Response is a far-left anti-ICE organization that's been responding to immigration raids. The group's website says the organization is committed to responding to raids, deportation, and any immigration customs enforcement activity happening across the state in our communities. The group has a hotline asking for tips from people who, quote, witness ICE activity, or if you want to document an experience with ICE. I say these people should be charged for conspiracy. Obstructing the arrest of an individual, I think this should be investigated, and whichever individual was responsible for that should be criminally charged. They say monitors the documentation of ICE activity. The Colorado Rapid Response says monitors police ICE collaboration, detects patterns that can guide our legislative efforts and build a robust statewide network of people resisting deportations in their communities. ICE Denver condemned the group and others like it, writing, groups like this interfere with ICE's ability to keep communities safe. If you know his whereabouts, do not approach. If seen, instead report all info to ICE at 1-866-347-2423, saying to law enforcement's presence, which allowed him. What is it? That's clearly cut off. What is it? Daily Wire, I don't think got the full. Okay, it says. Oh, I see. There was another tweet, but they don't know how to use X. That's weird. They put a ... considering you can just long form it. This morning, ICE and FBI Denver were attempting to arrest Jose Reyes, yada yada. During our surveillance, Rapid Response arrived on scene and alerted him to law enforcement's presence, which allowed him to escape arrest. Groups like this interfere with ICE's ability to keep communities safe. If you know his whereabouts, do not approach. If seen, instead, report all info to ICE. Protests and riots against ICE agents have popped up in liberal cities across the nation as President Donald Trump continues to fulfill his campaign promise to deport illegals, prioritizing immigrants who've committed serious crimes. The DOJ this past week announced it's pursuing more charges against suspects accused in taking part in the violent anti-ICE riots, specifically those in California, the Daily Wire highlighted. It is pretty crazy where we've come to as a nation. And, I've been dealing with it more so recently, which is strange considering we're winning. Polls across the board, public sentiment is all skewing in our direction. It's why Donald Trump won the national popular vote. But, man, what do you do? What do you do? Because the cult is the cult, man. I'll put it this way. You guys know this show. You watch the show. Not everybody does. But people who are on the right, staunch conservatives, let's say Steven Crowder's Mug Club, much more conservative than I, much more conservative than the audience of this show, with some overlap. I'm sure many of you watch Steven Crowder as well. Dude, his show is so funny. Man, I love it. It's really funny. But of those of you that are more conservative than I, you know what I think about things. You know my positions on these issues and these stories, and often you disagree. The left does not. The left lives in a cult-like crackpot reality where everything is black and white and they can't fathom it. I was trying to explain to a friend, to the left, there are two teams. There's the left and everybody else. But to everybody else, there's like 50 teams. There was an old chart showing Donald Trump's support base by ideology, based on economic or cultural views. Democrats were clustered into a hyper-cultural cultural left area. Economy didn't matter so much. It was all cultural, and it was all clustered in the bottom left quadrant. Trump supporters were spread out evenly, ranging on cultural issues, and actually on economic issues with a lean towards small government and free market. That is, there were many Trump supporters that leaned more towards a democratic socialist style of government, indeed. But on cultural issues, they were with Trump. And that's why they voted for the man. That cluster. How do you convince people they're in a cult they can't see out of when they're surrounded by cultists? Back in the day, before there was, let me say this. Cult mentality has always existed. And when we had a singular mass media, cult-like social adherence, it's a real thing. Now, when we talk about cults, we usually refer to some kind of charismatic leader. That's what defines the cult, right? But there's cult-like ideation and formation, and any society can have it, be zealous and ideologically driven. So let me put it this way. When the United States was largely unified under a media apparatus controlled by Mockingbird and the CIA, everybody basically agreed. And during the Cold War, if you were a commie, you were in trouble. In fact, you didn't even have human rights. The Civil Rights Act specifically says communists don't count. That's crazy. So back then, there was a zealotry, but the country was largely unified, and so it was okay. Back when there were blasphemy laws, even after the ratification of the Constitution, you couldn't blaspheme in public. You'd go to jail. Zealotry and ideological zealotry existed. So right now, what we're seeing with the left is they're adhering with fervent zealotry to an ideology that is unfounded. The reason why I call it a cult is that they believe things that are not true. They do not check the facts. They keep themselves blinded. And it is a cult without a leader. It is a structure. It is without a nucleus. And so long as they reinforce each other's views, they will stay in that cult. Now, how do you break someone from a cult? You have to physically remove them from it. But with social media and the phone, that's not likely to happen. They're attached to it. You see, back in the day, when this country was unified under a single media apparatus, you weren't watching the news 24/7. There were a bunch of different companies. And so while there was typically a narrative, the Cold War, for instance, on communists, there were still differing viewpoints because people lived in different places. News traveled in different ways. But now, these leftists, people even I know, follow only other cult accounts who filter out anything that is bad for their worldview. For example, 10 years ago, not 10 years ago, but 7 years ago, I'm in San Bernardino. Actually, this might have been 10 years ago. Wow. A group of leftists were protesting, and I walked over with my camera and said, hey, could I ask you guys, what are you protesting? Immediately, one of their leaders started yelling, mic check. That's what they do. And then the whole group started going, mic check, mic check. And they said, do not talk to the press. They need to isolate the information people receive. I was in Berkeley during the Battle for Berkeley. Well, Battle for Berkeley 2, I guess. And there was an Antifa guy. And he was fighting with people on the right. And I asked him, if I could talk to him, like, what was he doing? And he said, fascists came here and we're trying to stop them. We're trying to get them out. And I was like, what do you mean by fascist? And he's like, like people who want the government to control everyone's lives and like take over. And then I was like, so like authoritarians, like, yeah, like tyranny, they want rigid control. Right. And I said, those people in the park? And he's like, yup. And I was like, do you think those people like guns? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, and you think that they want more people to have guns? And he was like, yeah. And then I said, but isn't that anti-fascist? Because you're basically saying the government shouldn't be the only one with guns, and then the people have the ability to fight back. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, so maybe they're not fascists. Maybe they're something else. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. He had a knife. He showed it to me. He showed me he was armed. And he said he would stab somebody if he had to. See, that's the thing. This guy was told that these people in the park wanted the government to control their lives, and they were going to do it by force. And then I said, but don't these people think the government shouldn't be taking away people's guns and the people should have a right to keep and bear arms to fight a tyrannical government? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, that kind of sounds like they oppose fascism, doesn't it? He agreed. That's why they don't want you talking to members of their cult. And that's why many of the members of the cult will reject information that defies their worldview, even if it means helping a child rapist. I'm going to leave it there, my friends. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Stay tuned. More to come today. It's going to be wild, man. Today's crazy. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next segment.